Hello, and welcome. Tonight, we're traveling backward, far beyond the memory of modern cities, cars, or quiet bedrooms lit by warm lamps. We're going to a place where sandals tread uneven stones, where smoke drifts from open hearths, and where sacred chants echo beneath the weight of stone walls and centuries of devotion. You are in Jerusalem, but not the city as you know it now. You are in ancient Jerusalem, during the time of the Second Temple, a time when Herod's grand architecture still shimmered in the sun, when the Roman eagle loomed heavy over Jewish life, and when whispers of messiahs stirred crowds beneath olive trees. This is not a tour of the miraculous. Not tonight. Tonight, we will simply see what life felt like, what it smelled like, what it required of those who woke every day to the city's call. We begin not with kings, but with dust. Imagine yourself stirring before dawn. The light hasn't yet touched the limestone homes, but already the city is alive. Roosters crow somewhere in the distance, and the uneven sound of feet sandaled, quick, and tired echoes through the narrow alleyways. You are in Jerusalem during the first century. The Second Temple stands tall on its mount, a place of awe, routine, and sacrifice. The city smells of burning oil, fermented fish, sheep dung, and dust. Always dust. But before you step outside, you must be clean. You descend into the mikveh, a ritual bath carved from stone. The water is cold and still. You lower yourself slowly, allowing it to rise to your neck. This isn't simply for hygiene. It's about purity. Ritual purity, a constant concern. Touched a dead animal yesterday? You must wash. Touch someone bleeding or ill? You must wash. The rules are thick like the very air, and you carry them not in books, but in your body. You emerge, wet and cold, but now ready. Now, you may begin your day. There are no faucets here, no sinks, no plumbing. Your first task? Water. You hoist clay jugs and begin the slow trek to one of the public cisterns or wells, if your home is not among the lucky few with a private collection tank. The jug digs into your shoulder, and by the time you return, sweat has already soaked the linen at your back. Now you grind grain. Flatbread must be made quickly, efficiently. The oven is fueled by whatever can be burned: dry dung, bits of wood, straw. The air inside is already hot. The smoke, trapped between low ceilings, makes your eyes sting. You tear off bits of dough and slap them onto heated stones. There is no breakfast as you know it. There is bread, maybe olives. If the house has some leftover salted fish, it is a good morning. Children run barefoot, their knees caked with dust. A goat bleats from the courtyard. A neighbor calls out in Aramaic. The rhythm of their lives, dot, 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 it beats on. As the sun climbs, the marketplace fills. Vendors shout in Hebrew, Greek, and Latin. Chickens squawk under cages. The smell of dried figs mingles with that of rotting refuse swept to the corners by boys with fraying brooms. You walk cautiously. Men wearing tassels brush past you. Roman soldiers in heavy armor stride with sharp eyes, their red-crested helmets cutting a strange silhouette against the white stone. People lower their heads when they pass. Their presence is tolerated, but never welcomed. You feel eyes watching what you touch. Is it kosher? Has it been tithed? Did the vendor observe purity laws? Everything in Jerusalem is steeped in divine accountability. Food is not just food. It is obedience. And error has consequences, social, spiritual, sometimes even physical. You barter quietly, never shouting. The wrong words, the wrong gestures, dot, dot, can draw attention. And attention is not always safe. As you make your way home with your bundle of food, another figure waits at the gate. A tax collector. You know the man. He is Jewish, like you, but he works for Rome. His robes are clean. His sandals are newer, and his ledgers are always hungry. You give him what he demands. Some grumble under their breath, others mutter prayers of deliverance, but most say nothing. To speak against Rome is to invite suffering. The city is tense, like a cord stretched too tightly. And if it's not the Roman taxes, it's the temple tithes. A tenth of your oil, a portion of your grain. Sacrifices must be made, not just animals, but time, energy, livelihood, a constant struggle beneath a sky that rarely answers. You can feel it as the day continues. Something unsettled in the city. The Pharisees argue with the Sadducees. The Zealots whisper of rebellion. And the Essenes, well, they've mostly left into the wilderness, searching for purity beyond the city's reach. At the temple, sacrifices burn and priests chant. But below the mount, in the neighborhoods of carpenters, shepherds, and scribes, the people wait. Wait for relief. Wait for the Messiah. Wait for something that might not come in their lifetime. But hope, like dust, fills the cracks between stones. By evening, the streets begin to empty. Candles are lit. Prayers are murmured softly near lintels marked with old script. Bread is shared again. Faces are weary, but the day is done. Imagine yourself lying down now on a simple mat, your body sore, your mind still carrying the sounds of donkeys, merchants, and Roman boots. This was one day. And tomorrow, it begins again. You begin to understand why. You might not last a day in ancient Jerusalem. But what happens when this ancient city becomes the backdrop for something far more disruptive than crowded markets and temple rituals? Let us now step into a moment that changed the world. One trial, 3 rulers, and a carpenter accused of claiming something divine. And so, as the first light of dawn touched the rooftops of Jerusalem, and the quiet rhythm of daily life stirred once more, we turn from the dust-covered streets to the somber halls of power, to a moment in time that has echoed through centuries. Let us gently drift from the common day's labor to an unfolding drama that quietly shaped the soul of Western faith, the trial of Jesus of Nazareth. Imagine yourself among the olive groves outside the city, the cool night air settling in as stars emerge one by one. In the distance, torchlight flickers behind stone walls. Tension hangs in the air, delicate and unspoken. It is the time of Passover. Pilgrims from across Judea and beyond have crowded into Jerusalem. The city heaves with breath and bodies. Roman soldiers stand in corners and gates, watching, always watching. In this charged atmosphere, one man's teachings have stirred whispers in the streets and furrowed brows in the halls of authority. Jesus, a Galilean preacher. To some, a prophet. To others, a threat. He is not taken in broad daylight, but in darkness. A garden known as Gethsemane lies on the Mount of Olives. Here, under the rustling branches of ancient trees, Jesus prays. The city is hushed behind him. Then, the sound of footsteps. Steel and sandals. He is approached not by strangers, but by one of his own Judas. A kiss, soft and symbolic, seals the moment. There is no trial yet, only quiet confusion, hasty voices, and the clinking of chains. Jesus is brought first to the high priest's residence. The Sanhedrin, the religious council of elders, scribes, and priests, gathers not in the temple, but likely in the home of the high priest Caiaphas. The atmosphere is tense but restrained. Candlelight casts long shadows. They ask him questions, looking for contradiction. But Jesus is measured, silent even. When he does speak, he speaks of the Son of Man, of the right hand of power, and the clouds of heaven. These words, soft in tone, thunderous in meaning, are received not with reflection, but with alarm. Some among the council tear their garments, a sign of outrage. They declare his words blasphemy. And yet, the council does not have the authority to enact capital punishment. Pontius Pilate, governor of Judea, imagine the morning sun rising over the Antonia fortress. Stone towers gleam. Inside, The Roman prefect Pontius Pilate prepares to receive another petition. He is not unfamiliar with local tensions. His role is not one of peace, but of control. Rome demands stability. Jerusalem is volatile. They bring Jesus before him. They shift the accusation less about theology, more about rebellion. They call him King of the Jews, a claim with political weight. Pilate questions him. Are you the King of the Jews? Jesus replies with quiet ambiguity. You say that I am. Pilate finds no fault in him. But crowds are gathering. The mood is shifting. To avoid direct responsibility, Pilate sends him to Herod Antipas, ruler of Galilee. Herod is curious. He has heard of Jesus. Perhaps he hoped for signs, for wonders. But Jesus offers him no words, no signs, no spectacle. Disappointed, perhaps insulted, Herod mocks him. A royal robe is draped over Jesus' shoulders. Not with honor, but with scorn. He is sent back to Pilate. Now, back in Pilate's court, the pressure intensifies. The crowd is louder. They demand the prisoner's release, a Passover custom. Pilate offers them a choice. Barabbas, a man of known violence, or Jesus, the quiet teacher from Galilee. They choose Barabbas. Pilate, uneasy, famously washes his hands before them. A symbolic act, a gesture of disassociation. But his order remains. Jesus shall be crucified. It's worth pausing to understand the world behind these decisions. Roman law, efficient and brutal, prized order over fairness. A Roman governor could crucify based on perceived threat, not proven crime. Due process existed in form, but not always in spirit, especially for provincials, especially under pressure. Jewish law, more intricate and deliberative, required clear witness and daytime hearings. Yet Jesus' night trial, if it occurred as some sources suggest, broke these rules, which raises questions one scholars still quietly debate. Was this a religious trial wrapped in politics? Or a political decision draped in religious language? Perhaps both. Power, fear, prophecy, and politics braided together. What we see is not just a trial. It is a convergence of forces. Jewish identity under threat, Roman rule under strain, and a man whose teachings quietly appended both. And so, under a rising sun, Jesus carries his cross. We will not follow him to the hill today. We will not linger at the foot of that cruel wood. Instead, we remain in the courtrooms, where words weighed heavier than truth, and silence condemned a man more surely than shouts. The city stirs once again, unaware or unwilling to see the gravity of what has passed. Another trial has ended, another life sentenced. The rhythm of Jerusalem continues. And now, let us step away from the weight of this verdict and turn our gaze to something buried, something ancient, something hidden. In the dry cliffs of the desert, scrolls sleep in silence. And in them mystery. The trial is over. The verdict has been handed down. And while the city hums on in its rituals and routines, far from the crowded markets and Roman courts, beyond the olive groves and the bustle of the temple, a stillness lies. Out to the east, the wilderness opens wide. There, where the land begins to forget the noise of men, you'll find a place where parchment, not power, preserved a truth too fragile for daylight. Let us walk softly now, into the dry, whispering wind of the Judean desert. To Qumran, it began with a boy, not a scholar, not an archaeologist, just a shepherd searching for a lost goat in 1947. He tossed a stone into a cave, hoping to scare the animal out. Instead, he heard something break. The brittle crack of pottery, long untouched by time. Inside that cave, beneath layers of dust and shadow, lay scrolls wrapped in linen. A library lost to centuries, and a secret kept in silence. These would become known to the world as the Dead Sea Scrolls. And among them, the temple scrolls texts that spoke not just of worship, but of vision, of purity, of a different Jerusalem. To understand the scrolls, we must understand the people who wrote them, or at least who are believed to have done so. The Essenes, a sect, a brotherhood, a community set apart. They lived not in the cities, but in isolation. They rejected the temple authorities in Jerusalem, believing corruption had taken root. Instead of sacrifices in marble courts, they chose purification of the soul. Instead of noise and gold, they chose silence and stone. At Qumran, their life was measured and meticulous. Scrolls were copied by hand, ink flowing across parchment in steady lines. Meals were shared in silence, ritual baths taken regularly, and every aspect of life was regulated as if preparing for something. Something soon. Something divine. The Temple Scroll, one of the longest and most detailed among the findings, offers more than laws. It offers a blueprint. It imagines a temple more perfect than the one in Jerusalem. One not built by flawed kings or guarded by ambitious priests, but ordained by heaven's pattern. A sacred complex of vast proportions, surrounded by purity zones where not even the breath of impurity could enter. It was an ideal, a longing, a hope carved into parchment. The scrolls speak of angels, of battles between light and darkness, of a coming teacher of righteousness who would guide the faithful through the end of days. Among the documents lies the war scroll, detailing a final battle, not of armies we know, but of divine light against the sons of darkness. It is not a tale of blood and conquest in the usual sense. It is a cosmic reckoning, written with the precision of one who believed each word might shape the outcome. And then there is time itself. The Essenes followed a different calendar, not the lunar one used in Jerusalem, but a solar system 364 days. To them, the festivals in the temple were out of sync, the high priests misaligned, their worship out of season. Imagine that, an entire community withdrawing from society because they believed the calendar itself had fallen out of step with heaven. But not all was found. Cave 4, near Qumran, yielded thousands of fragments, ripped, decayed, half-burnt by time. There are references to books we have never read, texts no longer known. A scroll of the Book of Giants, where Nephilim walked the earth. An alternate Genesis, where stories diverge and echo differently. There is the question of why these texts were hidden. Were they placed in caves to protect them from Roman destruction during the First Jewish-Roman War? Were they buried in fear or with hope of future discovery? The scrolls do not answer directly. They whisper and leave you wondering. These were not marginal notes or stray ramblings. They were sacred to someone, perhaps to many. They reveal a rich textured diversity in Jewish thought during the Second Temple period. Not all Jews were Pharisees or Sadducees. Not all awaited the Messiah in the same way. Some retreated. They wrote. They prepared. And in their writing, we glimpse a Jerusalem that never was, and perhaps for them, was never meant to be. Today, you can see the scrolls under glass, preserved in dim light. A fragment of leather, no larger than a hand holding a sentence once whispered in hope. They have changed our understanding of Scripture, of history, of humanity. And still, we do not fully know who sealed them in jars, who carried them into caves, who died never knowing if they would be read again. But here, in the quiet hush of the desert, where stone shelters silence, their voices endure. And so, from the fragile parchment of the Essenes, we return to Jerusalem, to a very different life, hidden not in caves, but behind walls of privilege and power. Let us now open the gate to the homes of the priests, the elite, the guardians of the temple, those whose lives were far from the dust of Qumran, yet no less shaped by its sacred center. The wind of the desert recedes now. The echo of scrolls fades behind us. We return to the city, to Jerusalem, not to its markets or alleyways, but to a different world nestled within its stone embrace. Come now, up the gentle slope of the upper city, where olive trees sway just so in the breeze, and the streets widened slightly, cleared of the crowding that marks the lower quarters. This is the domain of the priests, not cloaked in the mystery of caves, but in robes, rituals, and rank. A life of structure and splendor here. Near the Temple Mount, stone houses rise in terraced clusters, their walls smoothed and whitewashed, their entrances discreet yet dignified. Step through a doorway. Imagine it is early morning. The light is soft, filtering through latticed windows. You are not in a palace, but there is wealth here, controlled, restrained, and deeply ritualized. In the home center, an open-air courtyard, cool with shade and the scent of pressed figs. Clay jars line the walls, some for wine, some for oil. There is a place for washing, a place for preparing food, a place for reading scrolls. And always there is order. For the life of a priest, even at home, was lived in rhythm with holiness. Ritual and routine. The priests of the Second Temple period were not simply spiritual guides. They were administrators of one of the ancient world's most intricate religious systems. Their daily routines followed the cycles of temple service, each family serving in shifts known as mishmarat. 24 divisions in total, each assigned a week at a time. When not on duty, a priest might teach, record laws, or oversee purity rituals in the community. But when the call came, they rose before dawn, bathing in ritual mikvahs, donning special linen garments, walking the polished steps up to the temple courts, their hearts steady, their minds fixed. Food and dining. In priestly homes, food reflected both privilege and precision. Certain portions of temple offerings were reserved for the priestly class: meat, grain, oil, wine. Not luxuries for display, but elements of sacred provision. Meals were often shared in silence or structured discussion. Bread dipped in oil and herbs. Dates, figs, olives, and lentils. Goat cheese, soft and mildly salted. But dietary rules ran deep. Utensils, preparation, timing, all had to be done in strict accordance with the laws of purity. And before every meal, the ritual washing of hands. Not a casual act, but a mark of distinction, a boundary between the sacred and the profane. Even when not in ceremonial attire, priests wore garments that marked them as set apart. Fine wool tunics, embroidered sashes, and at times, prayer fringes meticulously knotted. But in the temple, they transformed. The high priest, clothed in a breastplate set with 12 stones, each bearing the name of a tribe. On his forehead, a golden plate reading "Holy to the Lord." Bells and pomegranates adorned the hem of his robe, so his steps would not go unheard. These were not costumes. They were theology made visible, a moving symbol of intercession. A man walking between heaven and earth, education and influence. Most priests were literate, some deeply so. In an age where scrolls were precious and few, priestly homes might contain small libraries. Copies of the Torah, legal commentary, perhaps even poetry or psalms copied by hand. Sons were taught early, not just reading and writing, but how to memorize the genealogies, the temple blueprints, the order of offerings. And among the elders, many sat in the Sanhedrin, Jerusalem's high court of law. They ruled on legal cases, interpreted scripture, and weighed the actions of men. Their influence reached beyond the temple walls, into trade, politics, and diplomacy. But not all was well behind these walls. With status came scrutiny, and with wealth came temptation. By the 1st century, many among the priesthood were no longer viewed with reverence, but suspicion. Common folk saw the opulence, the connections with Rome, the heavy-handed taxes that funded the temple operations. Some whispered of bribes, of positions bought rather than earned. High priests like Annas and Caiaphas held power for decades, a sign many believed of politics, not providence. The Essenes, as we've seen, rejected them entirely. And others in the city began to question, was the temple still the house of God, Or had it become a den of merchants and officials? The priests lived in marble-tiled homes. Many in the city lived in mud-brick rooms, shared with animals, filled with smoke and shatter and the smell of stew. The priests wore clean, white linen. Laborers wore tunics, patched and stained by use. The priests had access to ritual baths, to scrolls, to legal protection. Others had only their prayers and the dust beneath their feet. And yet, when they all gathered at the temple, in the great outer courts, they stood side by side, Jew and proselyte, rich and poor, Pharisee and fisherman. All eyes turned toward the Holy of Holies, and for a moment, hierarchy melted into worship. In 70 CE, the temple was destroyed, its stones pulled down, its walls blackened by flame. Many priests fled. Some were killed. The garments, the sacrifices, the songs, all silenced. What remained was memory, and tradition, and longing. But even today, in excavations of Jerusalem, archaeologists uncover priestly homes with their stone tables, their ritual baths, and their tiled mosaics frozen mid-story. They speak to us now in stillness, a testimony, not of power, but of presence. And so we have wandered through the world of ancient Jerusalem, from the crowded streets below to the scrolls in the desert, from the judgment halls to the homes of priests. Next, we will bring all these threads together to reflect quietly on what remains and what was left behind. The city has grown still now. The sun has lowered behind the hills, casting long shadows over the ruins. We stand, not above it, not apart from it, but among the remnants listening. You can still hear them, if you try. The murmur of prayers in alleyways, the splash of water in stone basins, the low chant of Levites echoing across courtyards, the cry of a child chasing a goat in the dust, the creak of a scroll being unfurled beneath an oil lamp. It is gone, and yet it isn't. What time couldn't bury Jerusalem fell. The temple burned. The veil was torn, not just in the sanctuary, but across a civilization. But the daily lives, the hopes, the questions, they remain. In the songs still sung during Shabbat, in the stories told at Passover, in every prayer whispered at the Western Wall. The people scattered, but the memory held, because what they carried was not just stone and gold, but something deeper, a hunger for holiness, a rhythm of remembrance. It's easy to read history as if it were fiction, to flatten people into parchment, to imagine ancient faith as exotic or primitive or irrelevant, but it wasn't. It was real and hard and beautiful. People lived this, woke up to it, ate dinner in it, argued over it, clung to it in the night, died for it. And if you pause, if you really pause, you may realize we're not so different. Their world may be buried, but their questions are not. And maybe, just maybe, their answers still echo through the dust. Subscribe for more cinematic journeys through history. Leave a comment. What part of this ancient world moved you the most?